Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I bow at the lotus feet of my Guru Paramhansa Yogananda, and I bow to his great lineage of teachers, starting with Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, and Swami Shri Yukteswar Giri. And I bow to my divine friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda. So friends, welcome to the 10th episode of the series on the Mahabharata. I received some comments from some of my friends following these videos on YouTube or Facebook, and I want to thank you all for your encouragement and support. As we have been seeing so far in the story, the two poles, the opposing poles of human consciousness, are clearly personified by the Pandava and the Kaurava brothers, and they're always at odds with each other. There's this constant struggle, this inner battle for control over the kingdom of consciousness, and that's clearly what the Mahabharata is an allegory for. And everything we have seen so far in the story, starting with the story of King Shantanu, the story of Bhishma and his vows of renunciation, to the birth of Dhritarashtra and Pandu, Dhritarashtra representing the blind mind which is now controlling the kingdom, and to the Pandava and Kaurava brothers and their ongoing struggles. All of this is that unfoldment of our own spiritual journey, of how ultimately we can be led to liberation through the grace of God and by the spiritual virtues that reside within us. So, as we saw in the previous episode, Duryodhana, with the help of his uncle Shakuni, Duryodhana, as we know, represents material attachment, material desires, and Shakuni represents attachment. So they were able to create this extremely intelligent scheme and build this palace of lac for burning the Pandavas alive. And their plans almost go as they expected, except that Vidura, who represents Dharma, stands by the Pandava brothers and gives them information and help for them to escape. So the Pandava brothers have escaped and they are now safely living in disguise, and Duryodhana still thinks that they are dead because there were in fact 6 dead bodies found in the palace of lac when it was burned down. So he's still thinking that the Pandava brothers are not alive anymore. And the Pandavas now are actually living in disguise as Brahmins in this small village called Ekachakra, in which they seek refuge. As we already again discussed in the previous episode, this phase of exile in the life of the Pandavas represents an extremely important part of our own spiritual journey. It represents that necessary austerity, that need for us to go inside, to be able to pull back and to put ourselves through the required spiritual discipline in order to gain power, to gain spiritual power with which we can again face all those powers of delusion that are pulling us down. So this exile that they are living through in that village of Ekachakra is an extremely important part of our own spiritual life. It's a symbol for that. And there are a lot of things that happen when they're living in this small village. There is this story that's often told of this demon called Bakasura who is tormenting the villagers, and Bhima is able to kill that demon. As they've been staying there longer and longer, they start getting the sense that perhaps Duryodhana is not all that convinced, and he is not. He has a whole network of spies, and he is starting to become a little suspicious, wondering, did the Pandava brothers actually die, or are they really living in disguise somewhere, which is the truth as we know. So the Pandava brothers also get a little suspicious, wondering whether they are in fact hiding still, and Duryodhana is starting to become suspicious as to whether they are alive or not. And with the killing of this demon Bakasura, it's a critical point, because now even the villagers in Ekachakra, they're starting to wonder, how can a poor Brahmin living such an austere life be so strong that he can kill such a mighty demon? So it's sort of becoming a little bit unsafe for them to continue living in this village. But they don't know yet whether it is the right time and opportunity for them to break that disguise and reveal themselves, because they don't know what the climate in Hastinapura is like and whether Duryodhana might do something else to get rid of them. So they have to still wait and see when the right opportunity is for them to come out. And at the same time, what's happening in the kingdom of Panchala is Drupada is awaiting the marriage of his daughter Draupadi. Again, as we saw previously, Draupadi is the daughter of Drupada, who was born out of this great fire sacrifice that he performed in response to his defeat by Drona. As we already saw, Drupada represents extreme dispassion and Drona represents habit patterns, and they're always at war with each other. And Drona, by using the Pandava brothers, he defeats Drupada in war, and Drupada is humiliated by that defeat. So what he does is he again performs great austerities through this fire sacrifice, and as a result of that, he gets a son and a daughter, Drishtadyumna and Draupadi. Draupadi represents Kundalini energy. Kundalini energy is that vast, almost infinite source of energy that is residing inside our own self, just underneath the coccyx or the base of the spine, in our astral body. And the entire essence of the spiritual path is awakening and lifting that Kundalini energy so it can break through and dissolve all the obstacles that are keeping us bound to this material plane and to delusion. So, although Drupada was earlier defeated by the Pandava brothers, interestingly enough, rather than turning against them, he is in fact quite impressed by their strength and their talent, especially by that of Arjuna. So even back then, when he was fighting the war with the Pandava brothers, he makes up his mind that he wants to foster a relationship with the Pandava brothers. So one day he can actually use them to get back at Drona. And Draupadi is the best tool that he has. Now he could give his daughter's hand in marriage to one of the Pandava brothers, and in that way develop a relationship or a bond, and he can pull them onto his side and fight Drona perhaps one day in battle. So he has always been hoping that Draupadi would marry Arjuna because, again, who doesn't like Arjuna? And Arjuna extremely impressed Drupada in the battle through his skills in archery. But Drupada also hears the sad story of how the Pandava brothers were killed in in the Palace of Lac that was designed by Duryodhana. And just like Duryodhana and everybody else, he's pretty suspicious too, because the news is starting to get around that the Pandava brothers might not actually be dead. So he, along with his son Drishtadyumna, arranges for a swayamvara of Draupadi. Swayamvara, as we know, is the tradition through which a princess of a royal family is married, and it is a competition of sorts where princes and kings from all the different kingdoms are invited to participate, and whoever wins that competition gets to marry the princess. So Drupada arranges the swayamvara for Draupadi, and he constructs this extremely complex and intelligent contraption which he's convinced can only be won by Arjuna. So what he does is he creates a spinning disc, and at the center of a disc is an image of a fish. And the task or the competition is to string an extremely difficult to string bow and shoot an arrow that will accurately pierce the eye of the fish. And not only that, this disc is constantly spinning and it is on the ceiling. And the warrior cannot actually look up at the ceiling. The warrior has to look at the water on the floor, and based on the reflection that he's seeing, he has to accurately pierce the eye of the fish. So this is the task at hand. And he invites kings and princes from all over the land. He wants to make sure the news spreads far and wide, so that if the Pandava brothers are in fact alive somewhere, they would hear and they would come in order to participate in this kind of a task that is exclusively made for Arjuna. So that's exactly what happens. The Pandava brothers do hear about the swayamvara, but that's not what they're thinking about right now. For right now, they have to really leave Ekachakra and find a different place of refuge. And from whatever they know and find out, they realize that the kingdom of Panchala might be an ideal place for them to live in disguise until the opportunity is right for them to come out. So they start walking towards the kingdom of Panchala, and on the way, they meet the great sage Vyasa. Now, we have seen Vyasa a few times already in the story. He's a sage of great wisdom. He is in fact the author of the Mahabharata. He's a son of Satyavati and the one who fathered Dhritarashtra and Pandu. And Vyasa, when he meets the Pandava brothers, he gives them an extremely strong counsel that they have to attend the swayamvara of Draupadi and marry the daughter of Drupada. Now, you don't take the counsel of a sage like Vyasa too lightly. So Yudhishthira and all the Pandava brothers understand what this means, and they do decide to take part in the swayamvara. So they reach the kingdom of Panchala, and Kunti settles down in a forest hermitage while the 5 brothers go to the swayamvara to take part. And since Drupada has been spreading the word far and wide on his daughter's swayamvara, of course, all the usual characters have showed up to participate, like Duryodhana and the Kaurava brothers and Karna and Shalya and all of them. So the stage is already set for a momentous occasion. And the other person who shows up at the swayamvara, who's also there witnessing all of this, is Krishna and his brother Balarama. So that's an interesting twist in the story as well. And this is the first time in the story of Mahabharata that we officially encounter Krishna, who is in fact a cousin of the Pandava brothers, because Kunti and Krishna's father are in a way brother and sister. So every king who comes forward to actually try to string the bow and shoot the fish fails miserably. They're not even able to lift the bow to string it, because it requires a lot of strength and skill. And at one point during this competition, Karna comes forward to participate, and he tries to lift the bow, and as soon as he even goes near it, Draupadi protests. Now she is the one who is being given in marriage, and she says that I do not wish to marry the son of a charioteer. As we already know, Karna knows that he's adopted and he's not the biological son of his parents, but still he strongly identifies with his adopted family. And his father, his adopted father, is actually the charioteer for the kings of Hastinapura. So that's all he would like to identify as, despite the fact that he's now a king who's been crowned by Duryodhana. So Karna is insulted, but insult and rejection are not new for him, so that's what he has to live with. And as he is departing the stage, Arjuna enters, disguised as a Brahmin. Now, as the story is told, because the Brahmin wears a different kind of an attire and is dressed differently, it's not obvious to everybody watching them that these are in fact the Pandava brothers. They still think they're Brahmins. And he, with almost no effort, he lifts and strings the bow and he aims at the fish. At this point, everybody in that hall, a lot of people, start to protest, saying that a Brahmin should not be allowed to participate in a swayamvara either to win the hand of a Kshatriya or a royal princess. But then some of the people in the hall start to smell that these might not actually be Brahmins but the Pandava brothers in disguise, and somehow they're all able to settle down and Arjuna is able to participate. Krishna stands by Arjuna at this time as well. So as we all know, Arjuna is able to win this competition with great glory. He shoots 5 arrows and accurately pierces the eye of the fish, and the whole disc falls on the ground. And it is said, as Vyasa writes it, at this moment, even the heavens, all the gods from the heavens start flowering showers on Arjuna. Now we have to pause at this point and understand what really we are talking about here, because Arjuna, as we know, is a symbol for the 3rd chakra. He represents that act of self-control. He is a symbol for willpower, which is synonymous with the 3rd chakra. So that act of archery, what he's doing is an act of intense focus, of drawing our energy in and focusing it up. And the prize of that focus is that ascent of Kundalini energy. And interestingly, he uses 5 arrows. And we know that the Kundalini, or Draupadi in this case, is actually ascending through the 5 Pandava brothers. It is not just Arjuna who's ultimately going to end up marrying Draupadi, but all 5 of them. And we know that the 5 Pandava brothers represent the 5 chakras. And so this whole story, this victory, is a symbol for that ascent of Kundalini, of how the chakras are winning are uniting with the Kundalini energy, and that's the way the Pandavas marry Draupadi. The other important character to note here is Krishna. Krishna represents the 6th chakra. Although he is not officially one of the Pandava brothers, when Arjuna marries Draupadi and they return back to see Kunti, he also comes along with them. So they go as a party of 7 to meet Kunti. He is not going to marry Draupadi, but again, all the Pandava brothers and Kunti and Draupadi are devoted to him in a different way because he represents the sixth chakra, again, quite vital in that ascent of Kundalini. There are two characters, as we know in the Mahabharata, that represent the sixth chakra. Bhishma, who represents ego consciousness that resides in the medulla, and Krishna, who represents that pure light of the divine, the Kutastha Chaitanya that resides in the heart of every atom in creation. So Krishna represents the consciousness of the Guru, of intuitive guidance that is bearing witness to all that is happening. And when the Pandava brothers arrive at the hermitage to meet Kunti, Yudhishthira announces that they have won a prize. And without knowing what the prize is, Kunti immediately tells them to share the prize equally amongst all the brothers. Now, as the story is told, that word becomes binding, and all the five Pandava brothers end up marrying Draupadi. One might wonder, how can the words of Kunti, who is ignorant of the actual situation or something that she just said without fully understanding the context and the place, how could it be so binding that the brothers all end up marrying Draupadi? We have to understand this story, as Vyasa is narrating and writing for us, is in fact an allegory. What Vyasa is truly trying to communicate to us is that ascent of the Kundalini through the chakras. So that marriage, that union of the Pandava brothers is the perfect and the most appropriate symbol to represent that. And Krishna, bearing witness to that, again tells us what the role of that intuitive guidance is. So Draupadi, Kunti and all the Pandava brothers become one large family. This is an extremely critical point in the story of the Mahabharata, and it is not out of proportion that when Arjuna pierces the eye of the fish, even the gods in the heaven start showering him with flowers, because it represents that critical awakening in our own spiritual journey, where through focus and austerity and that deep concentration, we are able to lift that Kundalini energy up through our spine. And Krishna, who represents the consciousness of the Guru, is bearing witness to all of this. Now, it is pretty obvious to Drupada and those in his palace, and also Duryodhana and the Kaurava brothers and everyone, that this was actually Arjuna who came and won this competition, and the Pandava brothers are perhaps not dead after all. So what happens when they return to the palace of Hastinapura, we'll have to wait and see in the next episode. God bless you all.